Okay, here's what you're going to need for the Swig style sugar cookies. You're going to need oil, flour, sugar, powdered sugar, baking soda, salt, vanilla, cream of tartar, a cup of butter, 2 eggs, and a couple tablespoons of sour cream. So here you can see I am just going to add my butter and my sugars and get these creamed together. This is definitely one of my favorite sugar cookie recipes. I've already made this like multiple times since I first found the recipe, and it is definitely one of our favorites. The key to having these taste the best is to store them in the fridge and serve them slightly chilled. It like really increases the flavor and the texture, and they are just really, really good. So make sure that you definitely keep them chilled and serve them that way. They are also good like room temperature. They're like your standard sugar cookie, but when they're chilled is when they're like extra fantastic. So you can see I added the rest of my wet ingredients. Now I am adding in my flour, and I'm just going to get that mixed. This recipe does make quite a few cookies, as you'll see when I'm putting them on the cookie sheet and when I'm frosting them. So feel free to half this recipe if you're just trying it out, or if you just have a small family. Again, since I was making these to give to neighbors mostly, as well as keep some for our own treats for the season, I was fine making the full recipe. And I used my 3 tablespoon cookie scoop to get these to be the right size. You could make them smaller if you wanted to, but this 3 tablespoon size cookie scoop definitely makes them the best size, I think. And then before you bake them, you're going to dip a cup in some cooking spray and some sugar, and you're going to press down the cookies. They don't really spread very much, so kind of what the size that you press them down to will be the size that they are. The frosting for the Swig inspired cookies, you're going to need 3/4 cup of softened butter, 2 tablespoons of sour cream, 6 cups of powdered sugar, and then 1 to 2 tablespoons of milk or cream. So you're going to whip the butter together with the sour cream until they're light and fluffy, and then add in your powdered sugar as well as your milk or cream. I added some green food coloring to these for the sugar cookies. I also used the same recipe for the gingerbread sugar cookies that you'll see in a little bit. And I just made one frosting recipe, and it was enough to frost pretty much all of these cookies as well as the gingerbread cookies. And I only had a few left over that I didn't have enough frosting for. So I probably could have had enough frosting if I had been a little bit lighter handed on some of the other cookies that I frosted. So this one recipe is definitely enough for all of the cookies that you'll see today. Fudge, this is one of the easiest recipes. It only calls for 3 ingredients. I'm actually going to be doubling this, but I'm just going to show you the single version. You're going to need 3 cups of chocolate chips, 1 can of sweetened condensed milk, and about 1 to 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And basically you're just going to melt the sweetened condensed milk and the chocolate chips together, add some vanilla, and then you're going to pour it into a pan. If you want to add any mix-ins or toppings, you can. I'm going to be adding in some Heath chips on the top of half of my fudge today. So again, super easy. You're just going to pour everything into a microwavable dish. Again, I was doubling this batch, so I just used 3 packages or 6 cups of chocolate chips. I did a mix of semi-sweet and milk, just because that's what I had on hand, and I liked it. I like it to be a little bit sweet, but not overly sweet. So I do like the mixture of the semi-sweet with the milk chocolate. And then I'm just opening up my 2 cans of sweetened condensed milk, and I'm just going to pour that into my chocolate chips. And then I'm just going to microwave that. I'll start with about a minute and then do it in 30-second intervals after that until everything is all melted and looking good. And then you're just going to put it in the fridge. After you pour it into your pan, you'll see that in a little bit, and you'll just put it in the fridge until it hardens. This is one of the first times that I've actually put parchment paper. Usually I just leave it in the pan, but because I wanted them to look extra nice since I was giving them away, I lined my pan with parchment paper, and I used my cooking spray first, and that helped to kind of adhere the parchment paper to the pan so that it wasn't just sliding all over the place while I was trying to pour my fudge mixture in. So I'm just trimming down the sides so the paper isn't annoying, and then again just pressing it down, and then adding another light coat of cooking spray so that the fudge easily comes out. So here the chocolate chips have all melted finally, so I'm just giving it one last really good stir to really incorporate everything, and then I'm going to pour it into my pan.
Again, just doing one final stir to make sure everything's nice and smooth. You can kind of see it gets kind of like a sheen, shininess to it when it's ready. So I'm just going to pour all of it out into my pan, and then I'm going to flatten it and level it out the best that I can. And it is pretty sticky, so make sure that you, if it's too sticky, you can always spray your spatula with some cooking spray, and that will help. I've also in the past used like a cooking glove, like a kitchen glove, with a little bit of spray on it to use my hand to flatten it if I need to. And then on this one half, I'm adding my toppings, which are just some Heath chips. So I'm just pouring that on half the pan, and then I'm going to slightly press down to help them kind of adhere into the fudge. You can do that with any of the toppings that you want to add to your fudge. Then I'm just going to put a lid on it and put it in the fridge until it hardens.
Here's everything you're going to need for the gingerbread swig style cookies. You're going to need half a cup of softened butter. You're also going to need flour, sugar, powdered sugar, baking soda, baking powder, salt, a couple tablespoons of sour cream, some molasses. You're going to need an egg, some oil, and then for seasonings and spices, you're going to need cinnamon, allspice, nutmeg, and ginger.
So here again, these gingerbread swig style cookies are pretty much the same as the first sugar cookie recipe that I showed you. One of the only differences is some of the amounts are a little bit different, and you will be adding in molasses as well as some spices that you saw in with the ingredients. So you will add those things instead of just a straight up sugar cookie. These were really good. We really liked these. I liked that they weren't overly sweet on their own, which my husband appreciated because he's not a huge frosting person and he doesn't like things if they're too sweet. So these had a really good gingerbread flavor without being like overpowering, without being like an overpowering gingerbread flavor. So they're definitely good if you have people in your life that like the essence of it, or maybe they're not strong gingerbread fans. They still will probably enjoy these quite a bit. So here you can see I'm adding in the molasses, which gives it that nice, like deep gingerbread flavor. And I'm just going to mix all of those ingredients. And then I'm going to be adding in my flour and the last of my dry ingredients and mixing those all together as well. This is a slightly smaller recipe than the sugar cookie recipe. So it doesn't make as many cookies as the regular straight up sugar cookie recipe does. But they are still very good, and my family still really, really enjoyed them. Again, I'm going to be using that same 3 tablespoon cookie scoop and putting them on my pan. And like I said before, these ones also don't spread very much. So when you are all done scooping out your cookies, make sure that you have them an appropriate distance apart. They can be a little bit closer together than maybe like a chocolate chip cookie because they don't spread very much. But you will also do the same thing that you did with the regular sugar cookies, where you will take your cup, have some cooking spray on it, dip it in a bowl of sugar, and then use that to press down and flatten your cookies. This definitely helps them to cook more evenly because it makes them all kind of the same thickness, and also gives a little bit of a ridge to where the frosting can lay. So here I am frosting these ones as well. As you can see with these ones, I put quite a bit of frosting on them, and I probably should have gone a little bit lighter, and I could have then frosted like all of the cookies with that one batch of frosting. And I just went with a white frosting just to be classic here. So I frosted these ones first, and then I dyed the frosting green to frost the rest of the sugar cookies with. And after I did the frosting of these, I added on some candy cane bits, which made them look super cute. And they tasted good with the candy cane bits. I liked it, but they don't store very well that way. The candy cane bits did get soft, so they didn't add the crunch after they'd been stored, but they did add a good flavor.
Okay, for homemade peanut butter cups, you are going to need a cup of melted butter. You're also going to need 1 3/4 cups of crushed graham crackers. That's between 1 and 2 packages, 1 and 2 sleeves. You're also going to need 1 cup of peanut butter, 2 1/3 cup of powdered sugar, and you're going to mix all those together, put them in the bottom of a pan, and then on top you're going to add 2 cups of melted chocolate chips with a little bit of peanut butter to help them stick to the bottom layer.
So this is one of our family's favorite recipes, and we make these all throughout the year, not just at Christmas time, but they are also a good Christmas time treat. So I ended up using 2 full sleeves of graham crackers. It did end up being closer to like 3-ish cups instead of like the 2-ish cups, 1 3/4 cups. But I still liked the texture of that it gave the peanut butter. It gave it a little bit of a, not gritty, but it gave it the peanut butter part a little bit more of a texture than if you used fewer graham crackers. So I poured in my melted butter, and then I'm adding in my peanut butter. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. You don't have to be too exact with this recipe if you don't want to. So I'm just scooping the peanut butter in, and then I'm going to add in the powdered sugar. You can cut back on the powdered sugar if you don't like them as sweet. We prefer them to be sweeter, so we use the full amount. And then I'm just mixing it all up until it's all a consistent color, and you don't really see any of the powdered sugar left anymore, and it forms kind of like a dough. And then after that's done, you are going to pour it into a sprayed pan. I usually make them in a 9x9 pan. This one is actually like an 8x11 pan or something like that. It's not as big as a 9x13, but it's not as small as like an 8x8 or a 9x9. So I just poured the dough in there and pressed that down, and I really ended up liking the size and the proportions when I used this pan. So now I'm just going to do my chocolate on top. So I'm going to add in 2 cups of chocolate chips, which is 1 package, as well as a couple tablespoons of peanut butter. And adding that peanut butter is key. It helps the peanut butter, or it helps the chocolate stick together, and helps the chocolate layer stick to the peanut butter layer. Or if you don't add enough peanut butter to the chocolate layer is likely to just shred and completely fall off. So that will just go in the fridge again until it is hardened, and then you can pull it out and cut it up.
Okay, this is the recipe I'm going to be using for the candy cane kiss cookies as well as the Andes mint cookies. You are going to need flour, sugar, brown sugar. You're going to need powdered sugar to roll the cookies in. For the cookie dough, you're also going to need baking soda, cocoa powder, salt, some eggs, a stick of butter, some vanilla, and then after you cook the cookies, when they come out of the oven, while they're still warm, you're going to put either an Andes mint or a candy cane kiss on top, and then kind of swirl it around as they melt.
So here I'm making a double recipe just because I wanted to make a full batch of the candy cane ones and a full batch of the Andes mint ones. And since it's the same cookie base, I just am doubling it. So the recipe that I'll leave in the show notes below, the recipe I'll leave in the description box below will just be for a single recipe. And there are a few changes from the original recipe that I do. I don't add in extra mini chocolate chips. And today I didn't roll the cookie dough in powdered sugar. I have done that in the past, and it is good. But this time I was just trying to be efficient with my time. And so I didn't take that extra step, and they still tasted wonderful and were really good. So here, like a regular cookie recipe, I added my wet ingredients, creamed my butters and my sugars together, added the rest of the wet ingredients, mixed those together. Then I added in my flour, cocoa powder, and any of my other like dry ingredients. And then I'm just going to mix those. This dough can be a little bit finicky, depending on your weather and your proportions and your humidity and all kinds of things. So if it is hard to scoop out, this day mine was really hard. So I put it in the fridge, and that helped to firm it up and made it much, much easier to scoop. I just scooped these in my small 1 tablespoon cookie scoop, just because I feel like they have a good proportion between the candy and the cookie. So after they came out of the oven, I put the Andes mints on them, waited a few minutes until they started to get shiny, and then I took a spoon and kind of swirled the melted candy around just to kind of spread the candy out so it wasn't just a rectangle sitting on top of the cookie. And then I did a similar thing with the candy canes. Once the cookies came out of the oven, I just put a candy cane kiss on each cookie and then let it melt. These ones do take longer to melt just because they're thicker and taller. But after a few minutes, you can kind of see them start to sink. And then I just took my spoon and kind of finished pressing them down so there wasn't like a weird point. These ones, if you swirl them too much, they will turn pink. So I tried to be very gentle and just kind of like dab and push and then lift straight up. And then for my next thing, these are some Rolo pretzel treats. Some people call them turtles. But I just put some square pretzels down on a cookie sheet. And then I'm going to put 1 Rolo on top of each one of those. And some people make these with nuts. I usually just make them with Rolos and M&Ms because that's what my family likes. But you just put these in a 350 degree oven for like 3 minutes. And then once you pull them out, you're going to take an M&M and you're going to press down on the Rolo. The Rolo shouldn't be completely melty. If you do longer than 3 minutes, they might not look like they're soft, but they'll be soft enough. You don't want them too soft. Otherwise your chocolate and caramel Rolos will just melt everywhere. And then you'll just let those harden. And then for the last little thing, I just am dipping some Oreos and then topping them with different kind of fun things. So here I'm topping them with candy cane bits, and then I also top some with sprinkles. You can dunk these and dip the whole Oreo, but I find it just easier and faster if I just do half, and I think it looks just as pretty. So I topped these ones with some sprinkles, and then again, just let them harden. With my leftover chocolate, I also dipped a few pretzels that I had on hand. So here are the final results. Here is the fudge that I had cut up after it hardened. Here are the gingerbread swig cookies. Here are the peanut butter cups and how they turned out, as well as some of the chocolate dipped pretzels that I did with my leftover dipping chocolate. And then here are the pretzel Rolo treats. Those are my family's favorites. And then here are the dipped Oreos. And then lastly, here are the swig sugar cookies. And like I said, I was making these to give to neighbors and friends, as well as to keep some for us, for our family, eating and enjoying this holiday season. So here's what one of the boxes looked like with some of the treats inside that I was getting ready to give to friends and family. And then on top, you can see there's a little bag. That's where I put the Oreos, the pretzels, and the Rolo pretzels, so that they wouldn't get soggy. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.